Let's build a component that handles rendering our reminders. We now have reminders and props, and everything works fine, but the user just doesn't know that yet. So let's define a render reminders helper method. Render reminders. In this method, we'll return an unordered list of reminders submitted by the user. So first up, we'll want to access our reminders. Remember, we can use an ES6 trick whenever our variable name and the property that we want is exactly the same. So let's console.log reminders to check that this is actually working. And before I do so, I'm going to delete this console.log props, otherwise it's going to blow up our console. Before we move on, we'll actually need to call this .render reminders in our JSX, and these curly braces allow us to just render or use a function within the JSX itself. So let's say I have to buy some groceries. We'll add a reminder, and right now the reminders have been empty, but as soon as it's not empty, we get an array with our object. Great. So now we can get rid of that console log. We know our reminders variable is working, and now we can actually move on to building the unordered list and JSX that will control rendering our list of reminders. So first off, remember with JSX, we always want to return the JSX. We just can't write it out. Then we'll have an unordered list first. Our class name for the unordered list will be some React Bootstrap class names. So list group, list-group, space, and we're going to use the column SM4, which is just a nice sizing that fits our application. We'll have another curly brace, and this time we're going to map over reminders so we can render each reminder individually as another list component. So again, we need to return the JSX. We'll have a list JSX tag. Our key is going to be reminder.id. Remember, each of these reminders has an ID. And then this class name for this list component will be list group item. So it's an item in this list group that we created with our unordered list. Cool. And then we'll have a div element with just our reminder text for now. Let's save and see what that looks like. So if I have to buy groceries, there it is. Let's say I have to greet grandma now. And there it is, showing up in a very nice list. Now, I don't want it to be in between the button and the div, actually. I want this to be after the whole form component, so let's put it after. I'll save. And then once more, greet grandma. All right, cool. And while we're at it, it's about time to add some of our own CSS to this application, just so the appearance looks a little better. So let's define a new CSS file globally within our source folder. So we'll say new file index.css. And the first thing we're going to target is our app component. So remember, we have an app class name. Let's go ahead and give it some padding, top of about 20 pixels. I don't want it touching the sides anymore. I'm going to give it a display of flex. The flex direction of everything is going to be column, because if you do it by row, everything will now be side to side. I want it to be normal, and the normal one is column that you see right now. And let's align everything to the center. Now our title also should have a text align of center. Let's make it significant. We want the font size to be bigger. Let's increase it to 26 pixels. Now the last thing we need to do is include index.css within our index.js. So let's import simply index.css from the same directory. We'll save. And aha, that looks so much better. As I resize a little more, you can see that this is a true inline component. So let's say I have to, once again, buy groceries. Haven't done it yet. And this is looking a lot better. Now I do think this could use a little spacing. So let's go back to CSS and then change up the input component. And we'll change all inputs. It's okay for right now because we only have one. Later on, you might want to use a class name. We're just going to give it a margin of 5 pixels. And then for our app, let's just call this the reminder form. And then our reminder form is going to have some padding of 5 pixels. So let's check that out. Okay, that's looking really good. And let's say I have to go fishing. Sweet. That's looking really nice. So now we can move on to actually implementing some functionality to delete items from this list. Let's say I actually went fishing. Well, I got to get rid of that reminder now because you already reminded me and it did it. So let's move on.